All right, crystal ball time. That's always fun.
Ooh.
Do you think DLSS will maintain slash become better relative to FSR to justify the extra silicon and engineering efforts on a per game basis? Or do you think it's likely to go the way of G-Sync? So basically, is DLSS going to improve, or is it going to be, outcompeted and become like a FreeSync situation where the more open technology dominates? I think right from the start, I've sort of been saying that I don't really see either of these technologies being the future. If I look like 5 years, get my crystal ball, look 5 years into the future, I think the future is a DLSS like technology being used in many different game engines, implemented in all sorts of different ways, where some games may use DLSS, some games may use like Unreal Engine 5's TSR technology. That might be the way to go, and developers may come up with a different temporal upscaling technology. I think that's sort of the future that we'll see, where people will learn the lessons of what DLSS has been able to do. We can use temporal reconstruction, we can use AI, and then there'll be all sorts of things come out. And we've seen this, like, let's use like Hairworks as an example. We first saw hair simulations come out with Hairworks in games. Looks impressive. But then today, how many games have hair simulations? A fair few, but how many of them use Hairworks? They're all using their own implementations. Game developers come up with their own solution for their own engine. Another developer comes up with their own solution or modifies a solution from another developer. And I think I think we'll see that with these sorts of things. So yeah, I expect DLSS, there'll still be some development efforts. I still expect FSR to have some development efforts as well. But I think they'll just become,
that's right.
I think they'll just become one tool that developers can use in their tool chest. There'll be all sorts of different things that developers can pick and choose from that depends on the exact game. Maybe a developer that has less resources to develop that sort of thing will use something like FSR or DLSS, and then developers like Unreal Engine will come up with their own solution because they've got the resources to do it. So yeah, this battle will happen over time and all that sort of thing, and I'm sure DLSS will improve and FSR will improve, and it'll become a big, like a battle between AMD and Nvidia. These companies will want this to become a battle to sell you GPUs. They'll be wanting to make their thing seem better than the other thing, but then over time we'll see what I've been saying. We'll move on to the next frontier. We've had anti-aliasing, we've had Hairworks, we've had tessellation, we've now got this, and then there'll be something else in the future that people will move on to once that thing is played out like that. At least that's my expectation.
Yeah, potentially. I guess it depends on how much R&D they pump into each technology and how it develops and evolves over time. I think ultimately that's a good thing. Like, we definitely don't want DLSS to go away. Like, when I see people talking about, FSR is going to kill off DLSS for reasons, easier to implement, blah, 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 blah.
Like, no.
That's not what we want to happen.
No.
Because if that fantasy land was true, AMD's going to be like, okay, we've killed off DLSS. We now don't have to counter that technology anymore. Do you think AMD's going to pump tons of R&D into making FSR better? It's like, we won. That technology sort of goes off to die now, and what Tim's been saying, game engines will take over. Whereas if it becomes sort of a key selling point of either architecture, either current product, then they're both going to be heavily developing that. And that's a win for gamers. We don't really care if it's a win for AMD or NVIDIA. We want to see them both putting tons of time and effort into making those technologies better for gamers. So that's how I sort of see that one going. And that's basically my opinion on that. I really don't want either technology to die out. We've already seen by introducing FSR, we've seen NVIDIA be much more active in getting it into games and really making it known that they're working hard to get it in games and they're working hard to improve it, and there's more updates coming. And we're seeing that because of FSR, and we're seeing FSR because of DLSS. So
yeah, exactly.
That's how that works.
You always want to see competition in these sorts of things. Part of this question was talking about, for example, will DLSS justify the extra silicon and engineering efforts? I think DLSS, in my opinion, was one technique that did justify, or was an attempt to justify, some of that with Turing, as an example. But over time, what the tensor cores do in NVIDIA's GPU design, AMD's GPUs are starting to have more of those sort of lower level instruction sets also being supported. And yeah, it may not use the exact same instruction sets, but you're going to get a very similar sort of feature implemented into these sorts of GPUs as well. So, yeah, over time, I think, as we said, we want these technologies to get better and sort of light the torch and carry the torch forward for what things can be done, and to show people, we have got good technologies and we can compete and we can make games looking better and all that sort of thing. But over time, it's going to, the more competition there is, the more features there are available, the less focus there'll be on that particular competition feature, and it'll move into, as I said, sort of the next thing when someone comes up with some sort of monopolistic feature. AMD tried it in the past with Mantle, back when that was their sort of key thing that eventually became Vulkan. And then, NVIDIA's obviously tried it with various different features. And there's always going to be some frontier technology where one company comes up with something that isn't supported at all on the other one, and then new battle starts between those two things. So, I think what we're talking about is probably, at least what I'm talking about, is quite a way in the future. I'm not expecting there to be each engine using their own technology within the next year or two, but it tends to sort of be the way that it goes. And it's good to see these sorts of developments happen and push the technology forward, because without competition you just get stagnation, which I guess has happened on the hardware side at times, and that's not what we want to see.